without getting into specific products, there's two general directions we're seeing Amazon going. One, again, more creative. They're wanting to give power to brands and really help brands connect with their audiences. So I think small things like the lifestyle image at the top of the page on the billboard ad, that's been amazing. And they're doing a lot more with that. They're providing more opportunities to have that style of advertising format across the board. So really invest in your creatives, your alignment with kind of your audience and all of that. The second big thing we're seeing is, I would say, a general AI-driven shift from maybe being search query to custom ads, custom opportunities for whatever your typical path to purchase is, right? So small things like Amazon opening up sponsored product ads to be off platform. So now they show up on Pinterest or BuzzFeed. Yes, it's scary. Everyone's wondering what type of controls they're going to have and they're not happy about it. But what it's going to do is it's going to potentially dilute our CPCs because now we have more real estate that everyone's bidding on and more ways to connect with our audience throughout their path to purchase. Like PPC is great. It's not difficult. Someone's typing in chapstick and you're showing them your chapstick. You're not doing any work. Amazon did all the work to drive that customer to you. But as we start moving into more owned and operated, more display, I think we're going to get the opportunity to connect better.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the eMarketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
And I'm super excited actually today to be chatting with Destaney Wishon, who runs BetterAMS, which is an agency and a technology, I think, or maybe just an agency that focuses on helping merchants and FBA merchants improve their results on Amazon. So what was the catalyst for you starting the company? Was there anything in particular?
Yeah, so I'm based in Bentonville, Arkansas, which comes up typically every single call I'm on because I'm about half a block from the new Walmart home office.
Yeah.
So I born and raised here directly out of college. I got started at a really quick growing startup that was a bunch of ex-Walmart people who figured out Amazon. So at 22 years old, I was handed a very large budget, helping some of the largest vendors from Walmart transition over to Amazon. And then you get sucked into this space and you can't leave it. So that's where I'm at now.
Right. And where at the time, Amazon was slightly more skewed towards vendor type relationships with the big ones, right? Although now a bunch of medium size and even some of the bigger folks have transitioned from being Amazon vendors to being FBA, which gives them pricing control. So I'd love to have you explain sort of why that's happening, because there seems to be a shift where, Amazon's taking title in less and less inventory and actually shifting more to an FBA focus. Or is that actually being driven by the brands saying we want to control price and we want to control things more?
I would say a little bit of both, if we're being honest. I think this isn't necessarily my area of expertise, but that's actually how I got started in this space. Is we are helping brands with the 1P, 3P split, because at the time, a lot of their products are being crapped out, as in CRAP can't realize a profit. And they were having to transition really quickly and, create Amazon exclusive SKUs or different bundles and get really creative with how they could sell on Amazon. In my opinion, I think one of the larger variables in the beginning was the team support and the operational capabilities required to be 3P is a little bit more difficult. So I feel like Amazon was kind of this backup platform for everyone. So it was just easy, hey, here's our PO. Let's get everything thrown up. Let Amazon do the rest. Right. And then, COVID happened, which was a major catalyst for growth. And I think a lot of people started looking at their P&L and saying, oh, this is a really large area of the business. We should start focusing on this a lot more. And I think that probably put a lot more pressure on the operational side to make sure everyone had the fundamentals to really support a 3P model.
Yeah, it was fascinating to watch it from my perspective, because they didn't have as many folks in the marketplaces as clearly you did, because you sort of started there. But we had a few, and the ones who were started out as having vendor relationships with Amazon, and those vendor relationships often predated there even being sponsored listings, right? And so when the sponsored listings came out, they would say, "Oh my God, like their buyers beat me up on price and forced me to sell to them the most inexpensively they possibly could. And then a different division comes after my marketing department and grabs even more of my margin. Because if it wasn't bad enough that I sold it to them cheapest, now they're saying, oh, would you actually like to move some of that inventory? Oh, well, we have some way. So I think it's really, that's one of the love-hate relationship elements of the Amazon relationship that brands have, right? Is like, I can't believe how much the buyers had beat me up. But of course, once you move to FBA, you control margin and you control promotions. You control if you want to be doing anything or not. So
100%.
So are there particular industries that you and your team have gotten particularly expert in?
I would say we stay pretty agnostic from a category perspective, because on the PPC side, you will compete. So if we were to stay, strictly in beauty, for example, and we're all going to be bidding on the same keywords one way or another, I think you lose a little bit of that on DSP when it becomes a lot more audience based rather than query based. Mm-hmm. But I've been in the space for almost 7 years now. I think I've worked in almost every one of the major categories on my own. So they're a lot of fun. I don't want to say I prefer, but CPG, anything like replenishables tends to be a little bit more fun now that we're seeing advertising costs increase quite a bit. We can kind of justify things with the LTV and the new to brand aspect. As well as, I've worked in tech. Tech's been pretty difficult. That's another one where you're seeing just insane CPCs and the marketing budgets in the category, but they all have their little quirks and nuances.
Yeah, that's an area where, we're spoiled on my side of the business, because most of the e-commerce that we work on the Did It team's side is, Shopify or Magento, one of the others. And so the level of granularity to which we can measure LTV and be confident about the numbers is pretty high. They've been improving the ability to see LTV within Amazon, but I just don't feel like there's quite that same level of transparency or quite that same level of comfort in the numbers. How do you guys deal with the sort of ambiguity there?
Yeah, I think AMC is going to be a key to unlocking a lot of that, if we're being honest. I think that's what Amazon's really trying to back into. It's just a little bit difficult now because, you have to, be able to write the queries in order to pull the AMC instances. But what AMC is doing is finally giving us the clean room to say, hey, here's all of your customer IDs on the organic side, the search side, the DSP side. Let's view it all in one. And that's helping us back into, lifetime value and a different audience insights. It's just not that scalable right now. And, it does get incremental. You hit certain levels of spend, and I think it becomes a little bit more important to start backing into customer acquisition costs and things like that.
Yep.
But I think Amazon sees the direction the market's going. They're seeing how much more competitive their marketplace is. And they're like, hey, we're going to have to start giving more data in order to justify people increasing their marketing budgets.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear how your clients think about a challenge that also exists in the paid search environment for Google and Bing, which is, you've got your LTV data because you have your owned and operated store. Yeah. And then, of course, in some keyword instances, in order to continue to capture the customer, you're sometimes bidding against keyword permutations that even include your own brand.
Yeah.
Right? So you feel like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I'm paying for them again. As opposed to paying for them just once. But yet, if you're not there, you not only miss the opportunity for that revenue point, but you potentially lose the customer forever, right?
Yep.
And so we end up having some strategic conversations around okay, your marginal ROAS may not be where you'd like it to be, but what risk do you have? Right?
Yep. We are having to have the same conversations on Amazon consistently. And really, there's no great answer. I think quite a few brands have done some interesting case studies. And now that Amazon's giving us retail analytics data that does show us click share on the search term level, it helps. Because then we can say, hey, pull back on your branded spend. Let's see if we're going to maintain click share. Are people still clicking on our organic ad or our organic listing, even without our ad being there? So we can kind of back into that data. But I think with Amazon, everyone is in such a high purchase intent mode. So if you're not bidding on it, someone else will be. And if you're a commodity, that's a really dangerous game to play. Now, if you've spent a ton of money on, Meta or Google or a strong awareness play off platform, and then you're driving them to Amazon, you have a little bit more security, right? Because they've already been educated and loyal because of your external marketing. But it's, I think, a crazy industry to be in. I think in the next few years, we're going to see a lot on attribution and, how do you correlate everything across the board when it is an omni-channel market? No customers are typically agnostic to any one platform. And then you also layer in small variables like budget distribution. I think, traditionally we saw really set budgets across different verticals, and the industry changes so quickly and rolls out new either legal situations and or just targeting abilities. And we're going to need to be able to be a lot more fluid with our budget distribution.
Yeah, you mentioned targeting, and that's one of the areas where Amazon's particularly fascinating, because obviously you've got sort of the foundation keywords, and then you can work your way up to ASINs and potentially do competitive conquest advertising, and then you can go up into the category level and potentially even do a little mid-funnel and awareness advertising, and then you've got the entire DSP world. So, as you start to advise clients who are looking for the fruit that's higher up on the tree, right, where it's not always as cut and dry, exactly what the ROI is on it, what are some best practices that you recommend for that?
One, I think you change your mindset around the type of advertising. That's something that we're still having to break up. And I'm sure, being in this space for as long as we have, I made a post the other day that everyone was spoiled by sponsored products.
Yeah.
Because I think that they forget how high of customer intent is on Amazon. Amazon is giving you customers ready to convert, where else we don't necessarily get that off platform. Yeah. That's why we're now paying a premium on that real estate, right? But as you start moving up into display and some of the more awareness tactics, it becomes more like a traditional advertising technique, right? You have your awareness, your educational content that's utilizing more creative and more audience-based. And then you follow it up with a remarketing segment. And then you follow it up with maybe, that bottom of the funnel search presence. So we're having to really get granular on segmentation so we can spend a lot of time educating and explaining to our clients, this is top of the funnel for a reason. The goal is, maybe click-through rate or impressions, things like that. But we're going to own that audience in order to retarget them later. It's an educational curve though. And, Amazon is still relatively new in the DSP space. So I think they're at a little bit of a disadvantage in how it's been sold and how well their sponsored products performed historically.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any sort of case studies where there have been really material changes with regards to being able to do competitive conquest, right? So obviously keyword is the foundation, but competitive conquest and trying to make yourself visible on your competitors' products, right? That's sort of probably the next best thing. But in the case of a high loyalty product, you're not going to be able to tear the person away. But are there situations where you've seen it really work, competitive conquest?
100%. I always recommend to start with sponsored display because you can get so granular. DSP is a little bit broader because it is audience and impression based.
Right.
But when we're looking at sponsored display, you have the opportunity to just choose a product. You can choose one ASIN and say, hey, I want my product to show up directly under the buy box, under the bullets. Now, typically, as you mentioned, you have to make sure you have a competitive advantage, whether it's price, reviews, ratings, or, some selling proposition.
Yeah.
But we have seen insane numbers from those. I mean, $100,000 on Prime Day from targeting a specific competitor ASIN because we had a deal and they did not.
Interesting.
One thing I think that you called out and that I think is going to be interesting for the future is Amazon's now rolled out custom images on sponsored display. So you can upload a lifestyle image and video sponsored display. So when you're looking at your competitor's buy box, you can put a video of your product directly below, which means even if you now don't have a direct competitive advantage, we have the opportunity to educate someone who is directly looking at our number one competitor's product. So I think those are variables that are going to definitely help sellers in the future with conquesting.
Do you think that that's going to be an opportunity for sellers to use influencers more effectively in that video box to sort of pull the person away?
I do. I think social commerce is obviously a hot topic with Amazon. We've seen the changes to Inspire and some of the changes internally, I think, are going to be pushing for more UGC style content because it's natural, it's native, and it's what everyone's used to from scrolling external social media platforms.
Right. Cool. Well, any mistakes that you see pretty commonly when you bring on a new client and you're like, oh, there it is again, or it could be your team at this point, probably not you.
There's a few things. And I think most of them are honestly based around like education, if we're being really transparent. One, a lot of people don't realize how granular you can get with Amazon advertising because maybe they are used to an external advertising platform that is more audience based. You can get as specific as one keyword and you can control on the page where you're showing up, whether it's the number one sponsored ad spot or the product detail page, right? So with that level of control, it allows us to get really good at budget distribution. So we segment campaigns in a very granular fashion. So our brands can come to us and say, hey, I want to focus on conquesting, 7% of my budget going to that, like you mentioned. And we're able to create that segmentation in a way that really drives top line sales growth. So organic ranking, PPC campaigns, we're going to create those and we're going to put budget to that. So we're improving your overall share of shelf. So your top line's growing. Other small things I'll throw out is just not being able to keep up with Amazon's roadmap. I mean, none of us can. That's all I do, and it's still not easy. They have so many different product opportunities in the pipeline and already this year that it's easy to fall behind if you're not working with a strategic team. You know, Sponsor Brands now has a top of search video ad. Sponsor products are now off platform. Sponsor display videos, you know, new Amazon post opportunities. Like it changes so quick. You really have to keep up with everything.
Yeah. So is there a critical mass that you feel something should hit before you try it? Or because sometimes the new stuff doesn't always work.
No, actually, if you asked me about DSP, I'd give a different answer because you typically do need a larger budget for DSP, which can be risky.
Yeah. On
the search side, you don't ever need a large budget, right? So we are typically first to market with everything that rolls out because it's only going to be a, $500,000 test before I understand the levers that Amazon's trying to pull and the audience I'm trying to target. And on Amazon, there's a major first mover advantage. So we really like to get things up and running, like video and search. We're, in there the moment it was rolled out, and we just saw, double the ROAS that we did from any other ad type because it was so cheap and such a powerful advertising technique.
Something that scares some advertisers on video, less now than perhaps a few years back, was, oh, well, I don't have the budget to do something of the proper production value. Yep. But with influencers helping you make content and with the fact that the sort of authenticity style video can sometimes break through, budget is not as much an issue with regards to the production of the video asset anymore. It's really more now media cost that you need to deploy.
Completely agree. And I'll follow up with 2 points because I've had this conversation a ton. Well, 3 points actually. One, it's a pay-per-click model with Sponsor Brands video. So if your video is terrible and customers don't like it, it doesn't matter, other than maybe it dilutes your brand a little bit, but we're not going to get into that. 2, Amazon actually has a video creation builder within Advertising Console. It's not amazing, but it's very templated to how sponsored ads work. So I always say, hey, if you're unsure and you don't want to go create a video, create something in Advertising Console for free, get it up and running, test the capabilities. If it works for your brand, scale it. 3, the last thing I'll say is Amazon's invested in video. We've seen the power of it elsewhere. They're really giving us more creative control. Like I mentioned, sponsored display video, sponsored brands video. We're now seeing a lot more in streaming TV. You're going to have video as a part of your strategy regardless. You might as well invest in it now.
That's that's great advice for sure. There's a lot of different styles of video. And since perhaps you may have sort of been testing this element yourself as well, there's sort of the standard video, which has to break through in the first few seconds because, in YouTube, for example, if you get skipped, you get skipped, right? And so you really need to front load things. But there's an entirely separate set of videos which front load the hook, but then they'll run long. They'll do long form content and they'll actually sometimes run 2, 3, 5 minutes. I've seen hour long, they call them VSL style, video sales letter style videos. Is there something that's rising to the surface within Amazon's platform as far as like a sweet spot of length that you do?
I have nothing on the link side because they don't give us a lot of insights to that on the PPC side. There's definitely like certain spec requirements. It's got to be pretty short, but there are a few call outs we have seen is one, audio doesn't autoplay. So we typically recommend, hey, put something that either you don't need to listen to or have words on the screen. Other things that we've seen is make it specific to the queries you're going to be typing in or that you want your customer to type in. I think some people just throw up these really broad videos that they use from a branded campaign elsewhere, but it's still search query based. So make sure you're creating really, really targeted videos to those top volume search queries. So that way there's a lot of alignment, and then that will drive a lot of your click-through rate.
Yeah, that's a great point. As far as in the future, without mentioning anything that you're not allowed to talk about with regards to stuff that Amazon is rolling out, what has you excited about the next 6 months to a year, other than perhaps Prime Day, which is huge?
It's our Super Bowl. We got Fall Prime Day, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. It's going to be an insane next 6 to 12 months for sure. There's a lot I'm excited about. I would say, without getting into specific products, there's 2 general directions we're seeing Amazon going. One, again, more creative. They're wanting to give power to brands and really help brands connect with their audiences. So I think small things like the lifestyle image at the top of the page on the billboard ad, that's been amazing. And they're doing a lot more with that. They're providing more opportunities to have that style of advertising format across the board. So really invest in your creatives, your alignment with kind of your audience and all of that. The second big thing we're seeing is, I would say, a general AI driven shift from maybe being search query to custom ads, custom opportunities for whatever your typical path to purchase is, right? So small things like Amazon opening up sponsored product ads to be off platform. So now they show up on Pinterest or BuzzFeed. Yes, it's scary. Everyone's wondering what type of controls they're going to have and they're not happy about it. But what it's going to do is it's going to potentially dilute our CPCs because now we have more real estate that everyone's bidding on and more ways to connect with our audience throughout their path to purchase. Like PPC is great. It's not difficult. Someone's typing in chapstick and you're showing them your chapstick. You're not doing any work. Amazon did all the work to drive that customer to you. But as we start moving into more owned and operated, more display, I think we're going to get the opportunity to connect better.
That's a great advice. Another area that some people are investing more into is sort of redoing the images for their product pages. And then asking the questions, well, what should the hero image be? Should it have a person in it? And what's the balance of sort of visual real estate between the person, if I do use a person, and the product? So are there any best practices around that?
Not my area of expertise, so I'm not going to touch on it too much, but I will say, you asked about biggest mistakes, and there's kind of this tendency to think that PPC will be the thing that makes or breaks my brand, and it's not. It's your main image. Your main image is what's going to convince a customer to go from a search to actually clicking within your listing. And then you have to do the rest of the work, of course. I think being TOS compliant is always, a fun one of, hey, what kind of things can I get away with in my main image to increase my click-through rate? So kind of walking that line, treading that line carefully is always a fun one. But just making sure that you invest everything possible into optimizing those images is like the biggest call out I could have. Don't even think about PPC until you've optimized that listing.
Yeah, that's a great point. And part of the power of being in Amazon, obviously, is your brand URL may have almost no SEO pull or ranking capability in comparison to Amazon. So for a lot of DTC brands, their Amazon pages, either at the product level or store page, will outrank themselves for brand related searches. And then outside of brand related searches, it's a secondary opportunity to rank at the keyword level and including generic keywords.
Yeah.
So when you're redoing your listing and thinking not just about imagery but thinking about copy, we always try to remind people, like, this is an SEO opportunity for you in Google. This isn't just about showing up in the biggest commerce search engine, which is Amazon, but the other search engine as well.
Yeah.
Do you have teams that advise clients on best practices around, you know, generic SEO with regards to making your Amazon listings rank better?
So typically not. That's more so due to the nature of just how I've chosen to scale our agency. It's really difficult keeping up with everything on the Amazon advertising side. So our goal has always been to, be a mile deep, an inch wide rather than the reverse. So we work with really good partners usually to say, hey, like, let's audit this and take a look. And that's something that we usually look at before even taking on a provider. If I see someone again needs a lot of work on the listing side, I'm not going to take them on from an advertising side because that's going to directly limit my ability to drive strong results. So just try to have great partners in the space in that regards.
Absolutely. Absolutely. On the AI side, from an asset creation perspective, have your teams started to explore like using Midjourney for things or other tools?
We have primarily for just business development on our end. If we're being honest, I put out a ton of content in the space. So we've found a few different tools that have been fantastic for, taking my Loom video and redistributing it across a blog, a LinkedIn post, and 7 different short form pieces of content. And I think brands could also leverage that for everything they're doing on the influencer side. It's kind of this combination of doing a better job of authentically connecting with our audience, but also using things that help us do it at scale. Because I always joke, for any one brand owner, you could be successful at Shopify, SEO, email list building, TikTok, Amazon, Instagram, Facebook. It goes on and on. So anything that we have that can help us scale a little bit better is a good thing.
Yeah. One final question. There are an increasing number of tools that people can use to sort of augment what's available directly within the merchant, within Merchant Central on Amazon. And, some of them make use of API connections to the ad platform and allow you to do things that you couldn't otherwise do if you were just managing it directly. So without necessarily recommending a specific tool, unless you want to, how should people think through the making the decision as to which of these platforms are right for them?
That's a fantastic question. It's something that I spend a lot of time working on with brands. I think there's a few things that brands need to decide first is one, do they have the person in-house that can strategically lead their Amazon advertising? If yes, then it's typically best to work with a SaaS. It's going to be the most cost efficient and it's going to help you really launch campaigns, optimize bids, all of those things. The SaaS providers in the space, at least, I always kind of look at PackView, Perpetua. Those are typically, I would say, like the market leaders in those areas. They're getting first mover advantage on everything new. Hourly optimizations is a new thing, being able to bulk launch campaign creation and track share of voice. They're both on the cutting edge of those. And those are things you can't get natively in advertising console.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we always recommend, again, hey, decide if you have the internal shareholder to manage ads. If yes, use a software. I still talk to brands that have never used a software. And I'm like, how are you optimizing your bids? And they're like, we're not. And I'm like, your bid is the number one indicator of success. You need some form of bid optimization somewhere. But on the flip side, if you don't have that internal team or those internal shareholders, I almost always recommend a managed service. All of your strong managed service providers in the space will still also work with the software. If your team's not working with the software, then you're being limited in your capabilities just because Amazon's API is really powerful and they do help on efficiency, things like new opportunities that Ad Console doesn't get, and just how you scale internally.
Yeah. I was super excited to see that now day parting is starting to be available. Because within Google, day parting or adding day of week on top of day parting are some of the biggest predictors of click value. But the other one that's a huge one that I do not think is out there yet, although maybe it's coming, is geography. Right? Yes. We find that geography is hugely predictive to level of engagement, to conversion rate, AOV, and LTV. So hopefully we'll see geography at some point in Amazon as well.
I'm super curious, and I'm super curious at how different it'll be, like you mentioned, because I do feel like Amazon, search intent is so high. It's just from a personal curiosity of what that variance will be. AMC allows us to back into it a little bit. DSP allows us to back into it a little bit. So it would make sense that at some point it's rolled out into PPC.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy because in Google, we'll sometimes the difference will be so dramatic that if you take sort of a combination of a day part and a geo, we might be bidding up to 3 times more for
That's
the perfect
crazy.
geography and the perfect time of day, right? And so, you can basically jump in there and cherry pick out the clicks that are the very best ones. And often the competitors have no idea you're even doing it, right?
Yep.
They're looking at reporting that doesn't, you
Yep.
don't make a big difference in the average numbers when you go and do that. And it's actually a lot of fun to go in and sort of trounce a competitor and they don't even know what's going on.
That's how you know we're nerds, because this is the level of excitement, granularity we have over something like this.
For sure, absolutely. Well, if people want to get in touch with you, are there any conferences you're typically at, or should they just find you on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn's probably the best place. I think it's where I post the majority of all of my content. But other than that, I speak at a lot of the big conferences. So always more than happy to talk shop and just reach out and help with anything.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that wisdom. That's great.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.